The grand wedding venue sparkled under the soft glow of chandeliers, each one casting flickering shadows across the polished marble floor. Guests mingled with laughter and clinking glasses, their cheerful chatter a stark contrast to the knot tightening in my stomach. I stood at the edge of the crowd, my heart racing, both excited and anxious about the day ahead. It was supposed to be a celebration, but lurking beneath the surface was a tension I couldn't shake. I could feel the weight of unspoken words hovering around me, like a storm cloud ready to burst. As I surveyed the room, I caught sight of my son, James, laughing with his new wife, Margaret. They looked so happy, and yet an invisible barrier separated us. I wanted to join in their joy, to embrace the warmth of family, but the past tugged at my heart, reminding me of the fractures that had formed over the years. I took a deep breath, trying to steady the tremor in my hands. Today is about love, I whispered to myself, but the thought felt hollow amidst the swirling emotions. Moments later, as the ceremony began, I felt a wave of nostalgia wash over me. Memories of James as a child flooded my mind, his first steps, the way he used to cling to me during thunderstorms. I longed for the simplicity of those times, before life had woven such complex threads into our family tapestry. But now, as I watched him exchange vows, I couldn't help but feel an overwhelming sense of loss. I was losing my son to this new life, and the thought gnawed at me. The ceremony concluded, and we transitioned to the reception, laughter and music filling the air. I sat at a table, my heart heavy, when a toast was proposed. I could sense the tension rising as James raised his glass, a familiar smile on his face. But then, just as I thought we were about to share a moment of connection, his voice rang out across the room, cutting through the laughter like a knife. "To my wife, who is now my family, my mother." "She's not family anymore." The words echoed in my ears, and for a moment it felt like the world around me faded to black. I was paralyzed, the shock coursing through me, and I knew then that the wedding I had hoped would heal our bonds was instead poised to tear them apart. As the wedding ceremony unfolded, I found myself enveloped in a bittersweet haze, the scent of fresh flowers mingling with the crispness of spring air. The sun streamed through the grand windows, illuminating the vibrant colors of the floral arrangements, yet casting long shadows in my heart. I sat in the audience, my hands clenched tightly in my lap, nails digging into my palms as I fought to keep my emotions at bay. The soft strains of music played in the background, but all I could hear was the thumping of my heart, echoing my anxiety. I watched James as he stood at the altar, his face radiating pure joy, and I felt a pang of longing for the closeness we once shared. Memories swirled around me, each one a reminder of the love that had been overshadowed by misunderstandings and resentment. I remembered the days when he would run to me with scraped knees, seeking comfort and reassurance. Now he was a man, and I felt like a ghost in his life, fading away with every passing moment. The ceremony progressed, and my hopes soared. Perhaps this marriage would bridge the gap, heal the wounds that had festered for too long. As Margaret walked down the aisle, her smile bright and hopeful, I felt a flicker of acceptance. Maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to coexist as a family. I took a deep breath, trying to absorb the happiness around me, but the knot in my stomach tightened again as I recalled the tension between us. When the moment came for toasts, my heart raced with anticipation. This was it, the opportunity for reconciliation, for a heartfelt gesture that could mend our fractured ties. I raised my glass, a smile plastered on my face, but it faltered when James spoke. His words sliced through the air, sharp and unyielding. "To my wife, who is now my family, my mother." "She's not family anymore." The laughter that followed felt like a cruel mockery, and I sat there, stunned as the world around me blurred. My heart sank deeper, the weight of his declaration crashing down on me, leaving me reeling in shock. I had hoped for acceptance, but instead I was thrust into a chasm of disappointment, grappling with the reality of my son's rejection. My mind raced, trying to comprehend how we had arrived at this moment, and I could only wonder what would come next. As the reception continued to swirl around me, my heart felt heavier with each passing moment. The laughter of the guests echoed like a taunt in my ears, a cruel reminder of my newfound isolation. I slipped away from the crowd, seeking solace in a quiet corner where I could gather my thoughts, but the weight of the moment clung to me like a shroud. My mind raced, and I found myself replaying James's words, each repetition slicing deeper into my heart. "She's not family anymore." How could he say that? I could still hear the laughter that followed his declaration, mingling with the clinking of glasses and the soft strains of music. It felt like a cruel joke, and I was the punchline. My hands trembled as I gripped the edge of the table, the cool wood grounding me amidst the chaos. I wanted to scream, to make them see how wrong this was, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I pulled out my phone and texted Sophie, my best friend, "Can you come? I need you." As I waited, I recalled the countless moments I had shared with James. His first steps, the way he would run into my arms after a fall, his laughter echoing through our home. But those days felt like a lifetime ago, overshadowed by the growing rift between us. I felt an intense frustration bubble within me. Hadn't I always been there for him? Just then Sophie appeared, her presence a beacon of warmth in my cold solitude. "Lily, what happened?" she asked, concern etched across her face. I could see the worry in her eyes, and it pushed me to finally voice the pain I had been holding. "He said I'm not family anymore, Sophie. I don't understand how he could choose her over me. I've sacrificed so much for him." Sophie took a deep breath, her eyes searching mine. "You need to talk to him. This can't go unresolved. He's your son and you've loved him through everything." Her words were meant to comfort, but they only fueled my anger. "You don't understand. He's pushed me away time and again, and now this. It feels like a betrayal." I could feel the heat rising in my chest, and I struggled to maintain my composure. The thought of confronting him again was daunting, but the thought of remaining silent was unbearable. As I sat there, I could feel the tension in my body coiling tighter like a spring ready to snap. I longed to mend our relationship, but how could I when every attempt felt like throwing a stone into a deep well? And then I remembered the family meeting James had suggested before the wedding. Would this be an opportunity to address everything? I hated the thought of facing Margaret, yet I knew it was necessary. Maybe a family meeting could help, I mused, my voice laced with uncertainty. But what if it just makes things worse? Sophie placed a comforting hand on my shoulder, her touch grounding me. "You won't know until you try. They need to hear your side, Lily. You deserve to be heard too," she encouraged, her eyes steady and resolute. Her unwavering support ignited a flicker of hope within me, but doubt still lingered. Would they even care to listen, or would I be met with more rejection? With a heavy heart, I realized that this was a defining moment for me, one that could determine the course of my relationship with my son and daughter-in-law. I had to gather my courage to stand firm in my truth, not just for myself, but for the sake of the family I had fought so hard to keep together. The thought of losing them for good sent shivers down my spine, yet I felt a spark of determination rising within me. "All right," I said, my voice steadier now. "I'll call the meeting, but it has to be fair. No more hiding from the truth." Sophie smiled, her eyes bright with encouragement. "That's the spirit, Lily. Just remember, you're not alone in this. I'm here for you every step of the way." As we left the quiet corner, I felt a mix of fear and resolve swirling within me. I was ready to face the family, to confront the injustices that had been buried beneath the surface for too long. It was time to reclaim my voice, to fight for my place in their lives, no matter the cost. In the days that followed the wedding, I felt the weight of unresolved tensions pressing down on me like a lead blanket. The air in my home was thick with unspoken words and emotions, the silence stretching like a taut rope ready to snap. I often found myself staring out the window, watching the spring blossoms sway gently in the breeze, a stark contrast to the turmoil swirling inside me. My phone buzzed, pulling me from my thoughts. It was a message from Sophie. "Let's meet. We need to talk about what happened." As I prepared for our meeting, I felt a mix of dread and determination. The soft fabric of my favorite sweater felt comforting against my skin, reminding me of better times, but I knew I needed to confront the truth, no matter how painful. I arrived at our usual cafe, the smell of fresh coffee and pastries enveloping me like a warm hug, yet I felt anything but cozy. I spotted Sophie at a corner table, her brow furrowed with concern as she waved me over. "Lily, you look like you've seen a ghost," she remarked, her voice laced with sympathy. I forced a smile, but it faltered as I took a seat, the weight of the moment pressing down on me. "I don't know how to face them again, Sophie. There's so much anger and hurt. It's like a festering wound that keeps getting worse." Sophie leaned in closer, her eyes searching mine. "You can't let them suppress your feelings. You need to tell them how their actions affect you. I know it's hard, but if you don't speak up, nothing will change." Her words struck a chord within me, resonating with my desire for justice. I recalled the countless times I had swallowed my pride for the sake of family, only to be met with dismissal and scorn. I took a deep breath, determination flooding my veins. "You're right, I've been silent for too long. This time I'll gather evidence of their hurtful words and actions. I need to confront them with the truth." As we strategized, my heart raced with a mix of fear and resolve. Every bit of anger I had bottled up felt like a fire igniting within me, ready to burst forth. I would not let their desire to suppress our issues dictate my worth any longer. We discussed the points I needed to raise and the past grievances that had been swept under the rug. With each revelation, I felt a sense of empowerment building inside me, but I knew it would require immense courage to face them. A few days later, I called the family meeting. My heart thudded in my chest as I typed the message. Would they even show up? Would they listen? The thought of Margaret's overbearing presence made my stomach churn, but I had to see this through. I envisioned the confrontation, imagining their reactions as I laid bare the emotional toll their dismissive attitudes had taken on me. The day of the meeting arrived, and I could feel the tension crackling in the air as I set up the living room, arranging chairs in a circle. Each piece of furniture felt like a witness to the impending showdown. My palms were clammy as I prepared to welcome them, and I could hear the clock ticking, each second amplifying my anxiety. Finally, the door opened and they trickled in. James looked apprehensive, his eyes darting nervously between Margaret and me as if he were caught in a crossfire. As we settled in, the atmosphere was thick with unspoken animosity. I could feel my heart pounding, each beat echoing in my ears. I opened my mouth to speak, but the words caught in my throat. The moment hung in the air, heavy and charged, until Margaret broke the silence with a dismissive wave of her hand. "Let's get this over with. We don't have time for your dramatics, Lily." Her words stung, igniting a fire within me. I took a deep breath, my voice trembling with emotion. "This isn't dramatics, Margaret. This is my life, and I refuse to let you dictate my worth any longer." I felt the weight of my words, each one a step toward reclaiming my voice. The confrontation escalated, emotions flaring as I revealed the wounds they had inflicted. Secrets were unveiled, and I could see the shock on their faces as I laid bare the hurt that had been buried for too long. It felt like a dam had broken, releasing a flood of pent-up emotions. I could hear my own voice rising above the chaos, filled with pain and determination, as I fought for my place in this family. In that moment, I realized that I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting for every moment of love and connection that had been lost amid the resentment. The air crackled with tension, but I stood my ground, ready to confront whatever came next. The showdown had begun, and I was prepared to face the consequences of bringing the truth into the light. The days after the confrontation were filled with a heavy silence that wrapped around me like a thick fog. I often found myself sitting in the living room, staring at the family photos that once brought me joy. Each image felt like a haunting reminder of what had been lost, the laughter and warmth now replaced by a chasm of hurt. As spring continued to bloom outside, I felt trapped in a winter of my own making. The scent of blooming flowers wafted through the open windows, but I felt numb to their beauty, the colors outside vibrant yet distant. I knew I had to reach out, to attempt to mend the pieces of our fractured family, but the thought of facing James and Margaret again filled me with dread. My hands trembled as I texted Sophie, my confidant, asking for her support. We agreed to meet at our favorite cafe, a place that had once been a sanctuary for our laughter and shared dreams. As I approached, the familiar aroma of coffee and pastries filled my senses, but today it felt suffocating rather than comforting. I spotted Sophie at a corner table, her expression a mix of concern and encouragement. "Lily, you look like you've been carrying the world on your shoulders," she said softly, gesturing for me to sit. I sighed, running a hand through my hair, feeling the weight of my thoughts pressing down. I want to reach out to them, but what if they reject me again? What if this just makes everything worse? My voice cracked with uncertainty, and I could see the empathy in her eyes as she leaned closer. "You have to try, Lily. Family doesn't just end because of one confrontation. It's about finding common ground, even if it's painful. You owe it to yourself to try and heal," she urged gently. I nodded, the flicker of hope she ignited battling against the shadows in my heart. I could almost hear James's laughter, a sound I yearned to hear again, but the echo of his words still stung like a fresh wound. After a long conversation filled with tears and laughter, we devised a plan. I would write a letter, pouring my heart out, expressing my desire for reconciliation. The thought of putting pen to paper felt daunting, but I knew I had to articulate my feelings clearly. I envisioned the words flowing from my heart, a bridge reaching out to them in the hopes of mending our broken ties. As I left the cafe, the sun dipped low, casting a golden glow that felt almost like a promise. That evening I sat at my desk, the soft light of my lamp illuminating the blank page before me. Each word felt like a step toward healing, and I poured everything onto the page, my love for them, my pain, and my hope for the future. I wrote about the moments we had shared, the laughter and love that had once defined us, and how I longed for those days to return. It was cathartic, each stroke of the pen releasing some of the pent-up grief I had been holding. Once the letter was done, I hesitated, my heart racing as I contemplated sending it. Would they see it as an olive branch or another burden? The thought of rejection gnawed at me, but I knew I had to take that leap of faith. I sealed the letter and placed it in an envelope, my hands shaking slightly as I addressed it to James and Margaret. It was a small gesture, yet it felt monumental, a first step toward healing. A few days later, I received a reply. James wanted to meet. My heart raced with a mix of excitement and fear as I prepared for our reunion. I chose a quiet park, a place where we could talk without the distractions of home. As I waited on a bench, I felt the gentle breeze caress my face, the warmth of the sun a contrast to the chill of uncertainty that gripped me. My heart pounded as I watched him approach, his expression unreadable. "Hey, Mom," he said softly, taking a seat beside me. I could see the tension in his shoulders, and I felt my own heart tighten in response. Our eyes met, and in that moment I knew this was our chance. "James, I'm so sorry for what happened at the wedding. I never wanted to hurt you or Margaret. I wanted to be part of your life," I began, my voice trembling with emotion. He looked away for a moment, the silence stretching between us, heavy with unspoken words. The air was thick with the weight of our shared history, and I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me. Perhaps this was the moment we could begin to heal the wounds that had torn us apart. The moment arrived with a chilling clarity, the air thick with anticipation as James stood to toast. I could almost taste the tension, a bitter reminder of the unspoken words that hung around us like a dense fog. The laughter of guests faded into a dull roar, their jovial clinking of glasses blurring into an indistinct background noise. I gripped my own glass tightly, feeling the cold surface against my clammy palms, my heart racing in a frantic rhythm, echoing my anxiety. As he raised his glass, a familiar warmth spread across his face, the kind that had always melted my heart. But this time it offered no comfort. My stomach twisted in knots as I prepared for what I hoped would be a moment of connection. Instead, his words sliced through the air like a knife, sharp and unforgiving. To my wife, who is now my family, my mother, she's not family anymore. The room fell into a stunned silence. My breath caught in my throat, the shock of his declaration reverberating through me like a thunderclap. I felt the world tilt beneath my feet, my mind racing to process the weight of his words. How could he sever our bond so coldly, like snipping a fraying thread? My heart sank as laughter erupted among the guests, a cruel mockery of the pain that surged within me. I could feel the heat rising to my cheeks, a flush of humiliation mixed with disbelief. The laughter echoed around me, each peal striking like a blow, making me feel more isolated than ever. I wanted to scream, to make them understand the gravity of what had just been said, but the words failed to form. Instead, I felt my resolve harden. I wasn't going to let this moment define me. I would not be reduced to a punchline in their twisted family narrative. As I sat there stunned, the reality of my situation began to settle in. I was no longer just a mother watching her son marry. I was a woman grappling with the harsh reality of exclusion. In that moment of profound realization, I knew I had to confront this injustice, to reclaim my voice and my place within this family, no matter the cost. The wedding, which I had hoped would heal our wounds, now felt like the beginning of a battle I was determined to fight. In the days following the wedding, my mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, each one sharper than the last. I sat in my dimly lit living room, the soft glow of the lamp casting long shadows that mirrored the darkness pooling in my heart. The scent of fresh coffee lingered in the air, a comforting aroma that felt out of place amidst my turmoil. I was determined to confront my family, to expose the injustices that had been swept under the rug for far too long. But first, I needed a plan. Sophie and I met at our usual cafe, the clatter of dishes and the hum of conversation creating a backdrop to our urgent discussion. I could see the concern etched on her face as she leaned in closer, her eyes sparkling with determination. We need to gather everything we can, the hurtful comments, the dismissive actions, all of it. You need evidence of how they've treated you, Lily, she urged. Her words struck a chord, igniting the fire within me that had been smoldering since the wedding. I nodded, feeling the resolve solidify in my chest as I began to recall the moments that had chipped away at my dignity. We spent hours poring over memories, reliving the hurtful exchanges and the dismissive comments that had lingered in the air like a toxic cloud. I felt a mix of anxiety and empowerment as I recounted each instance, my voice trembling yet steady with conviction. Every memory brought back the pain, but it also fortified my resolve. With each revelation, I felt like I was reclaiming a piece of myself that had been lost in the shadows of resentment. The thought of confronting my family filled me with dread, yet it was overshadowed by an urgent need for justice. I imagined the look on James's face when I laid out the truth before him, and I felt a surge of strength. I could no longer allow their actions to define my worth. I was ready to step into the light, to make them see the damage they had caused, and to fight for my place in our family. Sophie reached across the table, squeezing my hand, her support a lifeline amidst the storm of emotions swirling around me. "You've got this, Lily. I'll be right by your side," she reassured me, her faith in me lending me the confidence I needed. As I left the cafe, the sun dipped low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the world, a stark contrast to the storm within. I was ready to face my family, armed with the truth and the determination to reclaim my dignity. This was no longer just about anger, it was about standing firm in my identity and demanding the respect I deserved. The showdown was coming, and I would not back down. The family gathering unfolded with a palpable tension that felt like a living entity, wrapping around us as we took our seats in the living room, the once cozy space now feeling like a battleground. I could hear the distant chirping of birds outside, a stark contrast to the storm brewing within. My heart raced, each beat a reminder of the stakes involved. I had prepared for this moment, a confrontation that would peel back the layers of resentment and denial that had festered for too long. As James and Margaret entered, their expressions were guarded, eyes darting between me and each other. I could feel my palms sweating, the coolness of the chair beneath me doing little to soothe the heat building inside. I took a deep breath, gathering my courage like a shield. "Thank you for coming," I began, my voice steady enough to mask the tremor within. "We need to talk about what happened at the wedding." James shifted uncomfortably, his brow furrowing as he glanced at Margaret, who crossed her arms defensively. "What is there to talk about, Mom? You made your feelings clear," he replied, a hint of frustration lacing his tone. My heart sank at the dismissal, but I pressed on, unwilling to let their denial silence me. "I need you both to understand how your words affected me. When you said I wasn't family anymore, it shattered me," I said, my voice rising slightly, fueled by the hurt that had been bottled up for far too long. I could see the flicker of surprise in their eyes, but I had to keep pushing. "I've been there for you, James, through everything, and yet your loyalty to her blinds you to the pain you're causing me." Margaret's eyes narrowed, her lips pressed into a thin line. "This isn't about you, Lily. You need to accept that times change and families evolve," she countered, her tone defensive. I felt an anger rising within me, hot and fierce, but I tempered it with the resolve to fight for my place. "I refuse to accept that I am no longer part of this family. I will not be reduced to a punchline or an afterthought," I declared, my voice echoing in the charged silence. The tension in the room crackled like static electricity, and I could feel the air thicken with unspoken words. James's face flushed, a myriad of emotions swirling as he grappled with the weight of my confession. "Mom, I didn't mean," he started, but I cut him off, desperation spilling into my words. "You need to hear me. I've sacrificed so much, and all I wanted was to be included, to feel loved and valued." Margaret interjected, her voice rising above mine. "You're being selfish, Lily. You can't expect us to cater to your feelings all the time. We have our own lives now." The harshness of her words felt like a slap, igniting a firestorm of anger within me. I could feel my breath quickening, each inhale sharp and jagged. In that moment, I realized that this wasn't just about defending my place in the family, it was about reclaiming my dignity. "This ends with me. I will not allow you to dismiss my feelings any longer," I shouted, the weight of my emotions crashing down around us. James looked taken aback, his eyes wide as he processed my outburst. "Mom, he began again, his voice softer now, almost pleading, but I couldn't back down. "My silence was never consent to your decisions or your dismissals. I deserve to be part of this family, and I will fight for that." As the words hung in the air, I felt a strange sense of clarity wash over me. I had exposed the truth, and despite the anger and discomfort swirling around us, I had finally made my stand. This confrontation was just the beginning, a release of the pent-up emotions that had held me captive for too long. The air was charged with the promise of change, and I could only hope that we could find a way to heal the wounds that had been laid bare tonight. The aftermath of our confrontation left a lingering tension in the air, a heavy silence that enveloped me like a fog. I often found myself staring out the window, watching the world outside continue on, oblivious to my internal storm. The bright hues of spring seemed to mock my heartache, each blossom a reminder of the love I once felt so deeply. I had fought for my place, but at what cost? I felt raw, exposed, yet strangely liberated. The truth had been unleashed, and I knew I had to navigate the choppy waters of reconciliation carefully. Days passed, and the silence between us felt like a chasm, but I sensed a shift. James reached out first, a tentative text that read, "Can we talk?" My heart raced at the possibility of healing. I agreed to meet him at the park, where we used to spend lazy summer afternoons. The familiar sounds of laughter and playful shouts from children playing nearby filled the air, reminding me of happier times. As I waited, I felt a mix of hope and apprehension, my palms clammy as I fidgeted with the hem of my sweater. When James arrived, the tension was palpable. He looked different, his expression a blend of regret and determination. "Mom, I've been thinking about everything you said. I'm sorry. I didn't realize how much my words hurt you," he began, his voice steady yet filled with emotion. I could see the sincerity in his eyes, and it sparked a flicker of hope within me. "Thank you for saying that, James. I've always loved you, and I want us to find a way back to each other. But it's going to take time," I replied, my voice trembling slightly. The conversation unfolded slowly, like the delicate petals of a flower, revealing layers of pain and understanding. We spoke about the misunderstandings, the hurt, and the hopes we both held for our family. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over us, I felt a sense of closure slowly settling in. It wouldn't be easy, but we had taken the first step toward healing. I realized that while the wounds might not disappear overnight, the willingness to confront them was the foundation for rebuilding our family ties. The laughter of children echoed around us, a reminder that life continued, and perhaps so could we. As we parted that day, I felt lighter, the burden of unspoken words finally beginning to lift. Hope flickered in my heart, a promise of new beginnings, and I was ready to embrace them, one step at a time. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow that felt almost like a fresh start. I stood in my living room, surrounded by family photos that now held a different meaning, each captured moment a testament to our resilience. The laughter and warmth that once filled this space felt distant, yet I could sense a shift in the air, a fragile hope threading through the remnants of our fractured bonds. As I prepared for a family gathering, I took a moment to reflect on the journey that had brought us here. I had fought for my place, and while the scars of our past remained, I felt a